Hey, what's up guys? John from S&S Cycle here. As you can see, we have the 2001 883 Sportster back on the lift. If you didn't see our last video, we took the 883 and converted it to a 1200 using our 1200 conversion kit. Now we're back in, we're going to add some performance and some horsepower using our 482 cams and our hydraulic tappets. What does that complete? That completes the 1200 hooligan kit. Also, to avoid removing the stock heads, we're going to add some quickie push rods, and we'll show you how to do that. Let's get started on the teardown. We just finished teardown. Now we're ready to install our new cams. Before we do that, let's talk about the cams real quick. These are 482 cams. They work with the 2000 and up models of the Sportster. The pinion gear is acceptable to these. Now, 2000 and earlier Sportsters will need to switch their pinion gears. Here's a couple pinion gears for example. We offer many selections. But, talking about the cams real quick, how to identify which one's which. There's 4 of them. Number 1 has one little dot right here on the shoulder. Easy to identify. The number 2 cam, it's the biggest one, has 2 gears. You can pick it right out of the bunch. Number 3, it actually has 3 dots on it, so you know it's number 3. 2 on the shoulder and 1 on the gear. Number 4, 1 on the shoulder and 1 on the gear. Now that we know which ones are which and how to install them, we're going to check our bushings, make sure they're still good. We don't need to replace them. And we're also going to check the lobe clearance. First step before installing the cams is checking the bushings within the actual case itself. Looking for any type of big grooves, feeling any big grooves, any wear marks, anything that would make the cam not rotate as freely as it should. Which these are in great condition, so we do not need to replace them at this point in time. But always check before installing new cams. When you place in a cam, it can be 1, 2, or 3, any of the cams. Rotate the cam on the wheel, making sure it has enough clearance, does not rub, and comes down correctly, 360 degrees. You want to rotate it maybe a few times. Just making sure that it's nice and smooth and you do not feel any type of grabbing. If it does grab, it means it's grinding and you may have to clearance the deck. These are in great shape. We're ready to install. Now that we've checked the lobe clearance on our cams, we're ready to install them. Before we do that, we're going to add a little bit of assembly lube to each bushing and to each cam on the ends of them. Make sure they go in nice and smooth and rotate. Spread it around. And then we'll be adding some to the sides here. We're going to be starting off with cam 1 and cam 3 for the installation. Before you actually put them in, you want to make sure that your pinion gear mark is lined up. By doing that, you can rotate the motor and make sure your pinion mark right here is lined up parallel through the hole of cam 2. Now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and install cam 1. Slides right in. Notice my dot right here on the shoulder is shooting through hole 2. You want to aim this parallel to hole 2 in the middle of it. Moving on to cam 3, add some assembly lube. So hole 3 slides right in there. This is cam number 3. Now notice there's 2 dots right here on the shoulders. Those are parallel to the center of that hole. And this dot right here that will go into cam 4 is shooting down this way. Now that we've gotten those two ready, we're going to go ahead and line up number 2. You'll notice you have 1, 2, 3 dots right there. These dots need to all align. It's connecting the dots. So this, you have to imagine this line down here on your pinion gear is a dot. We're going to connect the dots. So by sliding in, finesse it a little bit, it's okay. Now that we've gotten cam 2 in there, we're going to double check this using a ruler. So if you look center to center, you line them up, it's parallel. Those dots are parallel. You line these up, those dots are parallel. And then we check this one, those dots are parallel. Now that we've gotten those all secured, we're going to go ahead and add number 4. That's number 4 cam. Adding some Simply Lube to it. And using the dots, we'll line up the 2 dots. Just like so. 2 dots are ready. Now that we've installed the cams correctly and they're timed, we're going to go ahead and put the cam cover back on. Before doing that, we're going to install some assembly lube to the bushings, rub it around, and make sure to use a new gasket. You do not want to reuse your old gasket, you want to use the new one. Now we're going to go ahead and reinstall our oil line to the cam cover and lock it into place with the hose clamp. Now that we've secured the oil line, we'll go ahead and slide on the cam cover. Lining up the bushings with the outers of the cams. Making sure our gasket doesn't move. No hoses get pinched. And tap it in. Go ahead and double check your gasket all the way around, making sure it seats correctly. And then maybe take a little soft mallet, a couple of little taps. Perfect. Now that we've gotten our cam cover back on, we're going to go ahead and install our bolts, making sure that we add Loctite to each one. I will pre-Loctite all of them and then feed them in. Now, putting them back in the same order that you took them out, feed them in. Now that you got them pre-fed in, we're going to go ahead and torque them down. You want to torque these down between 80 inch-pounds of torque and to 110 inch-pounds of torque. We're going to do ours at 100 inches. And the sequence that you want to do is starting off with number 1 right here. And number 2 right here. Number 3 is going to be right here. Number 4 is right underneath number 1. Number 5 is over here on the bottom. The order sequence for torquing is within the S&S instruction sheets. It will show you a diagram. Number 6 right above it. Number 7 right next to it. All right, number 9, or number 8 actually is right here, number 9, number 10, and number 11. So just like that, around the house. Now that we've torqued everything, I'm going to go back through one more time and make sure everything is good and tight. We're going to use the same sequence, starting with number 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We're going to go ahead and add the timing rotor back in, and we're going to put the ignition back in. With the timing rotor, you'll notice that there's a little piece right here, a little hump that goes inside this little crack right here within the second number 2 cam. I'm going to add some blue Loctite and line it up and put it back in. You'll be able to feel it slide in. It'll hold still and just feed in your bolt. We've timed the cams and we've buttoned up the cam cover. We've torqued it down and we're ready to move on to our lifters. Our tappets / lifters are going to be S&S premium hydraulic tappets. We've let them soak within motor oil for 24 hours. We highly suggest you do this. And now we're ready to install them. When installing them, you'll notice that the S&S logo is facing me. You always want to keep it facing me. On the left, you have a flat side. On the right, you have a flat side. And in the back, you have your hole. When you put it in, you slide it down, try to get the best angle as possible, just drop her right in. The reason why you want the flat side is because you're going to be putting your anti-rotation pin in here on this model through there. Now that we've gotten all our tappets inside the block, we're ready to install our anti-rotation pin. 2000 to 2005 models actually used this anti-rotation pin, which is a screw. You slide it in and screw. Earlier models used more of a triangle plate right here with the bolt on top. You take off and pull out the pins. Later models actually use tappet cups. So just know which application you have before diving into this so you know how to put it back together or make any type of modifications needed if necessary. We're going to be adding a little bit of Loctite, and we're going to, you may have to adjust a little bit to get her in there, but it should slide right in just like that. We're going to be torquing it down 100 inch-pounds of torque. It says to use 80 to 110, we're going to be using 100. If you can see right here, you're going to end up seeing the anti-rotation pin go across all the way into the block. What that does is it holds the tappet from rotating and does not spin. Now we'll repeat the process for all the other ones. All right, Now that we've installed our tappets and we have torqued down our anti-rotation pins, we're ready to install the tappet covers. On this 2001 Sportster, the tappet covers sit on just like so, using a dowel pin in the back and a bolt in the front. This is the same style setup for 2000 to 2004, 2005, right in that range. We will be using new O-rings, pushrod tube O-rings. Always update your pushrod tube O-rings. And for this particular application, we're going to be using the S&S adapter for the pushrod tubes. We want to install S&S pushrod tubes on here with the quickee pushrods. So you 91 to 2003 guys, you'll be needing these. One thing to note, there is a slight cut on the bottom of it. You will be laying it on, and the direction of the motor, the way the motor is cut, so the pushrod tube can go straight up and down. Pretty easy way to install this. Grab some oil, just some motor oil, lube up both of the items, and slide the adapter through the cover, put the O-ring on the adapter, a little bit of finessing, just push it on there, and you'll notice that this is the dowel pin back here, so I'm going to push in as much as I can because it's going to dance on you, so you're going to need to torque it to fall into place. That's why we oiled it, so it'll slide into place. So you put the dowel pin side in first, just like so. Get that set up. I'm going to grab my bolt and a little bit of Loctite on the front bolt here. Okay, that one doesn't have any. Get rid of that. A little bit of Loctite on this front bolt right here. And we're going to go ahead and feed her in. Okay, and we're going to be torquing this at about 115 pounds, or 15 inches of torque, sorry, 115 inches of torque. And repeat for the other 2 or 3 that you have left over. Now that you've assembled all the covers with the adapters and O-rings, we went ahead and loosened everything back up so we can adjust the adapters correctly for the pushrods and pushrod tubes. We have assembled one pushrod tube. This is the S&S pushrod tube. We're going to install the top O-ring gasket within the head and adjust it accordingly. A little bit of oil on the O-ring gasket to help it go in, and you slide it into the crease within the head up top. Now, using a screwdriver, we're going to place in the top part of the pushrod tube. Note we are not using the bottom gaskets on our pushrod tube right now, bottom O-rings, to adjust the actual adapter. We're using these pliers that do not have any type of abrasive marks on there, so it does not mess up the actual adapter. But if you notice right now, The adapter level is off. This side is a little bit lower than this side. We're trying to get it flush all the way around so the pushrod tube cover actually seats in there correctly. I'm going to rotate. And this may take a minute to figure out where the best spot is for it. Just be patient. See, we're getting very close to evenly making it right now. Go a little bit more. And I think we have it right there. Repeat the same process for the rest of the pushrod tube covers. Now that we've adjusted our adapters correctly, we're going to lock this into place, torquing it down and moving forward to the pushrods. Once you get it tightened just enough, you can remove the pushrod tube cover to help you torque it down. Right. So now that we have aligned our adapters correctly for our pushrod tubes, we went ahead and torqued down the covers. We torqued them down to 115 inch-pounds torque. We're going to go ahead and install the quickee pushrods and our pushrod tubes. Before doing this, I'm going to show you real quick how they come in the package. They come like this, and you get 3 O-rings. You get a bottom, a top, and a middle. So, how to put these together real fast. Remove, drop down all the assets that are right there. You have a couple washers, and I'll show you. This is your top tube. Goes up into the head right here. This seats onto the O-ring. You have a spring. The spring goes into the cuff first. Then you have a large washer and a smaller washer. The smaller washer is going to lay right on top of the spring, and you are going to get the medium O-ring, put it right there, right on top. What this medium O-ring does is it sits right in here. So I will show you. Slip these guys up. And you're probably going to need to push the O-ring on just a little bit. Slide her down. And then put it right on top, just like that. Now for the bottom, you have the big O-ring goes on the bottom, then you put the washer on top of the O-ring. Put the head O-ring up in here, and you're all set. This is how they work. You will use the keeper to hold them still. All right, now we're ready to install our quickee push rods. So what we need to do here, which we've already done, is jack up the rear end, remove the spark plugs, and then kick it up into high gear. We're going to rotate the motor, making this top dead center. We're going to start with the rear cylinder and work to the forward cylinder. We'll also have to put this in top dead center. Before, with the stock push rods, we cut them out using a pair of snippers. And now we're going to use the leftovers by laying them inside the pushrod holes where the tappets are, and so we can see and gauge where top dead center is by rotating the back tire. We're ready to install our quickee pushrods. One great feature with the S&S quickee pushrods is they collapse all the way. When rotating it all the way down, the pushrod collapses all the way up, making it for an easier installation. One other thing to note, when installing these, household appliance, paper clip, rubber band. Reason why you will need this, you will use it to keep the pushrod tube up while installing and adjusting quickee pushrod. Now that we have all our pieces ready to go, let's go ahead and install. Following the S&S instruction sheet, making sure the top of the quickee push rod is set into the eyelet. We'll rotate down by hand and extend the bottom of the quickee push rod into the tappet to secure it in place for adjustment. Perfect. Now that it's secured, we'll go ahead and lock in the top part of our pushrod tube using a flathead screwdriver. You will just push it in to the O-ring and lock it in place. You'll feel it seat and you should be good to go. Now our paper clip and rubber band comes into play. Just like so. Now that you've extended the bottom half of the quickee push rod as far as it can go by hand, we're going to adjust it using the nuts. Two tools that you will need: a 1/4 wrench and a 7/16 wrench. What we'll be doing here is we'll be holding the bottom half of the quickee push rod and using the flat sides of the upper nut and turning it 20 to 24 flats. Now that we've adjusted the quickee push rods 24 flats, extending them out, we're going to let it sit for about 20 to 30 minutes to bleed all the way out. Once it's done bleeding, you should be able to rotate these by finger. Now that the lifters have bled, we can test and make sure you can hand rotate the push rod inside. It's secure, does not move, and you can finger rotate this. This means it's perfectly bled, it's ready to go, and we can button everything up. When locking this in, use 7/16, 7/16, grab the top nut and the lock nut underneath, and tighten and lock it into place. Okay, we'll repeat the process for the front and move forward from there. Now that our quickee push rods are fully adjusted, we're ready to put the keepers on. The keepers are the top part of our S&S push rod tubes. Slide the top portion up, and in the bottom slit, you will have enough room to fit a screwdriver into. You grab the top, you're going to grab the top part right here, which is spring loaded, and retract it down and push the keeper on. Making sure it's secure both in top and bottom. This will extend the push rod tube down to your base. Once we've completed that, we'll go ahead and button up the rest of the engine. So there you have it. We've reassembled the bike. We've included 42 cams, hydraulic tappets, and quickee push rods. If you like this video, like it, comment. Always follow us on social media. And if you need more product information, visit sscycle.com.